Phil Matthew grew up in a small, quiet town where big dreams often felt like they belonged to people in faraway cities. He lived with his mom and dad in a cozy little house, but money was always tight. He watched his parents work hard every single day, yet they never seemed to get ahead. They always made sure he had what he needed, but treats were rare, and holidays were something they only saw on television. From a very young age, Phil understood the weight of financial worry. He saw the lines of stress on his parents' faces and promised himself that one day, he would build a different kind of life for himself and for them. This promise wasn't just a fleeting thought, it became a burning ambition inside him. While other kids were playing football in the park or collecting stickers, Phil was thinking about numbers. He would look at the price of sweets in the corner shop and wonder how much profit the owner made. He dreamed of a future where he wouldn't have to check a price tag before buying something he wanted. His goal was clear and huge. He wanted to earn £1 million. It sounded like an impossible number, a fantasy, but for Phil, it was a concrete target. A mountain he was determined to climb, no matter how steep the path. The challenges started early. In school, Phil wasn't the top student, and he often felt overlooked. He wasn't bad at his studies, but his mind was usually elsewhere, busy with his own plans and calculations. Some teachers thought he was a daydreamer, not focused enough on the subjects they taught. He faced taunts from some classmates who called his ambition silly. They couldn't understand why he spent his time reading books about business and saving his pocket money instead of spending it. This early sense of being an outsider didn't discourage him. Instead, it fueled his resolve to prove them all wrong and show what a dreamer could achieve. Despite the lack of encouragement from some, Phil had a quiet strength. He found inspiration in stories of people who had started with nothing and built something great. He would spend hours in the local library devouring biographies of successful entrepreneurs. These stories were his real education. They taught him that failure was a part of the journey and that resilience was the most important quality a person could have. He learned that success wasn't about being the smartest person in the room, but about working the hardest and never, ever giving up on the goal you set for yourself. As soon as he was old enough, Phil took his first step into the working world. His first job was as a kitchen porter in a busy local restaurant. The work was tough and far from glamorous. He spent long hours on his feet, washing mountains of greasy pots and pans, with the constant noise of the kitchen ringing in his ears. The pay was minimum wage, and many of his colleagues spent their earnings as soon as they got them. But Phil was different. Every paycheck was a precious building block for his future. He saw each pound not for what it could buy today, but for what it could become tomorrow. He adopted a strict and disciplined approach to saving. While others went out for drinks after their shifts, Phil would go straight home. He packed his own lunch every day, avoiding the expense of buying food. He walked or cycled everywhere, saving every penny he could on transport. His friends sometimes teased him for being so frugal, not understanding his long-term vision. He wore his clothes until they were worn out and only bought second-hand items when he absolutely needed something new. It was a lonely path at times, but Phil kept his million-pound goal firmly in his mind, and this made all the sacrifices feel worthwhile. After a couple of years in the kitchen, Phil knew he needed to earn more to accelerate his savings. He took on a second job, working as a cleaner in an office building during the early mornings. His days became a relentless cycle of work and sleep. He would wake up before sunrise to clean, then head straight to the restaurant for his afternoon and evening shift. He was constantly tired, his body aching from the physical labor, but his bank account was growing, slowly but surely. He meticulously tracked every penny he earned and saved, watching his savings pot inch closer to a meaningful sum. This period of intense work and extreme frugality taught Phil invaluable lessons about discipline and the real value of money. He learned that building wealth wasn't about one big lucky break, but about the consistent daily habit of earning more than you spend. He developed a deep respect for hard work and an immunity to the temptation of instant gratification. He was building more than just a savings account. He was forging the character and the resilience he would need for the much bigger challenges that lay ahead on his journey to becoming a millionaire. He knew this was just the foundation, the solid ground upon which he would build his empire. While working his two jobs, Phil was always observing, always looking for an opportunity. The spark for his business idea came from a simple problem he noticed during his cleaning job. Every morning he saw office workers arriving with expensive takeaway coffees and disposable cups. He also saw the overflowing bins in the office kitchen filled with single-use coffee pods from the office machine. He did some quick maths in his head, estimating how much the companies and their employees were spending on coffee each month. The numbers were staggering and the amount of waste generated was enormous. He saw a gap in the market. Phil envisioned a better way. His idea was a subscription service that provided high-quality, ethically sourced coffee beans directly to offices, along with professional-grade, easy-to-use coffee machines. The service would be cheaper for the companies than buying pods and better for the environment. It would also provide employees with a much better coffee experience than the instant sludge many were used to. He spent his few precious hours of free time researching the coffee industry, learning about bean sourcing, roasting processes, and commercial coffee equipment. His little notebook was soon filled with business plans and cost projections. Taking the leap from a secure, albeit low-paying job, to the uncertainty of starting a business, was the biggest decision of Phil's life. He had saved up just over £10,000, a sum that had taken him years of grueling work to accumulate. It was his entire life savings, his safety net. Using it to start a business felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump into the unknown. He faced immense fear and self-doubt. What if he failed? What if he lost everything he had worked so hard for? It was a moment of truth, a test of his courage and his belief in his idea. After weeks of sleepless nights, Phil made his choice. He quit both of his jobs and poured every single penny of his savings into his new venture, which he called Proper Grind. He bought his first commercial coffee machine and a small batch of premium coffee beans from a sustainable farm he had found through his research. He didn't have money for an office, so his small flat became his headquarters, with boxes of coffee beans stacked high in his living room. He was the founder, the salesman, the delivery driver, and the customer service representative all rolled into one. The journey had truly begun. The early days of Proper Grind were incredibly challenging. Phil faced rejection after rejection. He would walk from office to office carrying a flask of his coffee, trying to get a meeting with office managers. Most dismissed him without a second thought. They were happy with their current convenient solutions, but Phil's positivity was relentless. He believed so strongly in his product that he refused to be defeated. For every 10 doors that were slammed in his face, one would crack open just enough for him to offer a free trial. He knew that if he could just get people to taste his coffee, they would be convinced. His breakthrough came from a small tech startup that agreed to a 1-week trial. The employees loved the coffee and the office manager loved the savings. That first contract was a monumental victory. Armed with a real-life testimonial, Phil found it slightly easier to win over his next client, and then the next. He worked tirelessly, often making deliveries late at night and performing machine maintenance on weekends. He reinvested every bit of profit back into the business, buying more machines and expanding his inventory of beans. He was still living as frugally as he had when he was a kitchen porter, driven by his ultimate goal. As the business grew, Phil had to make smart, calculated choices. He hired his first employee to help with deliveries, freeing up his own time to focus on sales and strategy. He learned about marketing, building a simple website, and using social media to showcase his brand's commitment to quality and sustainability. He faced numerous problems along the way, from a supplier suddenly going out of business to a key machine breaking down right before a big client demonstration. Each problem was a crisis, but Phil tackled them with a calm and methodical approach, learning and adapting each time. His resilience, forged in those early years, was his greatest asset. One Tuesday morning, nearly a decade after he first started washing dishes, Phil was reviewing his accounts. He checked his business valuation, his investments, and his personal savings. He added up the numbers, his heart pounding in his chest, and there it was. The total had crossed the £1 million mark. There were no fireworks, no cheering crowds, just a quiet moment of overwhelming emotion in his small office. He had done it. Looking back, Phil realized the journey was more valuable than the destination. He had learned that true wealth wasn't just the money in the bank, but the strength, wisdom, and self-belief he had gained by daring to chase an impossible dream.